trusted their doctors and hospitals before the COVID pandemic, and that's down to 40%. That's a 31-point drop. Why? 85% of healthcare workers did not get a COVID booster. Why do 40% of our nation's children now have a chronic disease? Why do a third of our nation's children now have prediabetes or diabetes?
We're looking at a complete pole shift in the way the FDA is doing things, and also the health system in America in general, since RFK has got into the position there of power and making big changes. And today we're looking at Dr. Makary, who's the FDA commissioner, sharing his insights into what some of the changes that they're looking at implementing. So let's share this, and I'll make some comments as we go through.
Should healthy people have been not forced, but strongly coerced to take that?
Well, look, Joe, I had said during the time of the pandemic that if we have vaccine mandates for young, healthy individuals, we were going to see a rise of an anti-vaccine sentiment, and I think that's exactly what happened. We saw a tremendous loss in public trust. 71% of people trusted their doctors and hospitals before the COVID pandemic, and that's down to 40%. That's a 31-point drop. And I think it was from ignoring natural immunity. The government did not recognize because it failed to recognize natural immunity. And of course, that is probably why we see such a backlash today. There was never great evidence for repeat boosters in young, healthy children. As a matter of fact, there was a myocarditis risk that was largely downplayed in young males. And I think if you look at the track record of that committee, there's a reason why 85% of healthcare workers did not get a COVID booster.
Yeah, that's incredible, isn't it? 85% of healthcare workers didn't get the booster. What does that tell you? The healthcare workers have got more insights and more information than anybody else. And another interesting thing, in New Zealand, there was a mass exemption for healthcare workers, and there were thousands of medical practitioners in New Zealand chose not to get the vaccine at all. So they got a mass exemption. And of course, the New Zealand public never knew about this, but they were told to take vaccines, to work from home, even if you're working from home. And yet these healthcare professionals were working in the mainstream health system and they didn't have the vaccine. So it's an amazing thing. No wonder people have lost faith. What he was saying there, 70% of people have lost faith in the medical system and the professionals that are giving them advice. And that's because of the way that the government's treated us during the pandemic. And this is a massive shift for the FDA commissioner to come out and make these statements. I'm really impressed with this, and hopefully with the COVID inquiry that's going on in New Zealand, hopefully we get some information out about that and some accountability. Let's hope we do. There's no guarantees, but hopefully this information will come to the front in New Zealand as well. So let's carry on with this video.
Saying we're going to be less absolutist when there's no evidence. I think the most dangerous thing you can do in public health is to demand something of a young, healthy individual when the evidence is just not that supportive for a new virus that creates a new protein and a new vaccine that creates a new protein where we haven't had a clinical trial in over 4 years. And those results in children were mixed back 4 years ago.
As a country, our levels of obesity are just much higher than they need to be or should be. What does tackling that entail?
We've not been talking about root causes in healthcare. I've been in academic medicine and been at all the major institutions giving grand rounds. We don't talk about root causes. We don't ask, why do 40% of our nation's children now have a chronic disease? Why do a third of our nation's children now have prediabetes or diabetes? We've got to talk about school lunch programs, not just putting every 6-year-old on Ozempic. We've got to talk about environmental exposures and chemicals in the food, not just chemotherapy. If you look at the types of cancer that are going up in young people, they are the GI cancers. That is the organ that interfaces with what we eat. So we've got to look at all the chemicals. We are doing an inventory of the 1,000+ chemicals banned in Europe that appear in the U.S. food supply. You saw our action to remove all 9 petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply by next year. We're getting tremendous participation by the food manufacturers. We are looking into baby formula innovation. That recipe the FDA issues hasn't been updated essentially in 30 years. We need more innovation. Moms want baby formula without added sugar, without corn syrup, without seed oils. We need more innovation. It's been a regulatory failure. Opioids may have killed nearly 1 million Americans 19 years after the approval of Oxycontin.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit to unpack there. Obviously, he was talking about removing, or that they're going to remove 1,000 chemicals that are in the food in America that have already been banned in Europe. So why have they been banned in Europe? They've obviously found that those chemicals are causing damage, so they're a health concern. And if you're going to look at chemicals, then you've got a whole lot more than just those few to look at. There's 145,000 chemicals that are approved for use. So there's a huge problem there. And obviously, he's also talking about, this is really interesting from the FDA commissioner, to talk about the fact that we need to not just start pushing drugs like Ozempic for weight loss. We need to look at our food and our food supplies. And when you look at the FDA, it's the Food and Drug Administration. So it's not just drugs. I mean, they've got a big business approving drugs. Obviously, they get a lot of money from the pharmaceutical industry and fees when they approve drugs. But the food industry, looking into the food, is something that they're not really well known for. And obviously, we need to do it around the world. We need to do this in New Zealand and Australia and around the world, is to really look at what is in our food supply. And like he said about the cancers of the gut and the gastrointestinal system being on the rise, and diabetes being on the rise, these are food-related diseases, cholesterol problems, directly related to food over a period of years. So we have to look at our food supply. And I'm really, really impressed, again, to see the FDA commissioner talking about these things, bringing it to the fore for the FDA to take action and do something about these things.
If you need something, does the doctor need to be sold on something on TV for him to prescribe or her to prescribe the right thing for you? What's the whole rationale behind all these things? All I know about are side effects I never want to get all over my body. That's all I know from these things. And I see people, overweight people marching along the street. Where are they going? What are all these things, and why do we need them?
Yeah, they're always singing and dancing. They're always singing and dancing. And we have a regulation at the FDA. And I know sometimes you're at home totally healthy. You just get back from the gym and you're watching these ads nonstop and you want to say, okay, I give up. I'll take it. I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is. But I don't want it.
Look, there's a regulation that says there should not be a misleading impression from these ads. And so we're taking a hard look at that.
Now, this is another interesting thing. He mentioned earlier about the opioid crisis and how 1 million Americans have died from opioids and opioid overdose. Overprescription of opioids. There's been overprescription of antibiotics. But not only that, the advertising of drugs and pharmaceuticals on television, and it's allowed to be done in the USA and in New Zealand. The only two countries that allow only two countries in the world, as far as I know, that are allowed to advertise drugs on television. And the way they do it is shocking. In New Zealand, they have these tactics of that you're going to be suffering with this disease. You're very, very likely to get these diseases. Shingles is a good one. And you're going to suffer in agony and pain for years if you don't go to your doctor and get this drug. And so they're using terrible fear tactics to try and get you to go and take drugs that you possibly don't need, and that there are other interventions and things you can do to help improve your health and prevent yourself from getting these things. But the side effects, and that's another thing that they were talking about there, the terrible side effects of many pharmaceutical drugs are not often talked about. And I know I've been in the States and seen the ads on TV there, and they do list the side effects at the end of the commercials, and they're terrible. But I haven't seen those listed on the ads in New Zealand, so it's something we need to be looking at. In fact, we shouldn't be advertising pharmaceutical drugs on television at all. So those are my thoughts on the FDA Commissioner's comments. It's really interesting. You should have a look at the full video. I'll drop a link into that as well. But once again, thanks for watching. Hope it's been helpful. Please follow and share and like and get this information out there. So